Welcome to the Secrets of Professional Gamblers tutorial series. This is tutorial 6, Professional Staking Methods. Okay, so a few words of introduction. I'm a professional engineer, and while at university I was looking for a way to make a few extra dollars that wouldn't interrupt my studies. I had a TAB in my place, which is basically a government-approved agent for horse, greyhound and harness racing, and I decided to check it out. I knew nothing about betting at first, so I put a lot of research into it and ended up knowing quite a lot about the subject. I soon realised to be good at this activity, I would have to go about it professionally. And for a start, I wouldn't be betting at the TAB because of the totalisator system they used. I also wouldn't bet at a casino because of the automatic loss built into every game. In fact, the only betting I found that could be exploited for profit was sports betting, including horse racing, as long as I had access to fixed odds. I found that investing in sports markets shared a lot with traditional investing, which not only allowed me to bet profitably, but also led me to create a number of unique betting products, which you can find on eBay. Just search for me, Matt's Games, and have a look at Wildfire Pro Keno and Wildfire Pro Lotto. My latest product is Wildfire Pro Sportsbet, and I'll be using it throughout this series, and if you're interested, you can get your own copy at the link below in the comments. I like to put a disclaimer ahead of all my videos because I'm not encouraging people to waste their money on cheap thrills. I believe the main rules of gambling professionally are these. Don't risk more money than you can afford to lose, set a limit and stick to it. If you are going to gamble long-term and professionally, set aside a bankroll for betting purposes, don't use it for anything else, and manage it carefully. Betting is easy when all goes well, but if you find you begin to stress after a number of losses, betting gets reckless and you stop managing your money, perhaps it's time to look for another hobby. Stop gambling, you're not suited to this activity. In the last video, we learned how to profit from a framed horse racing market. The goal of this tutorial series has not just been to teach you how to win at gambling, but to bring you out of the arena of the mud punter into the realm of the professional gambler. If we really want to profit in the long term, then there are certain rules we must follow. First, we must use a bankroll, an amount of money set aside strictly for the purposes of our betting, out of which we don't take the cost of food, cab, bed, drinks, newspapers and so on. Second, we always keep track of our bets and returns, and have our profit and loss records up to date at the end of each betting day. Third, we never drink alcohol to keep our mind sharp and our betting successful. Fourth, we must always be aware of our long-term betting strategy and strictly apply it. Fifth, any side bets must never come out of our main bankroll. And sixth, if we are playing side bets, we should also keep a bankroll and records for them separate from our main bankroll. There are three very important aspects to a professional bet. That is, how to bet, how much to bet, and defining what our long-term betting strategy is. How to bet is about the mechanics of calculating and staking our bet. If we're aiming for a set profit or a total spend on multiple selections, then we need to know how this is done and then do it consistently. How much to bet is related to our bankroll and our main strategy. Will we wager a set amount, a percentage of our total bankroll, or use some other method to determine our total stake? Finally, our long-term betting strategy is our plan and goals we are working towards every time we make a bet. These are listed in reverse order. We need to start with the big picture first, and then drill down to our daily activities. After you decide on a bankroll amount, $500 or $1,000 is a good place to start. It's time to define your long-term betting strategy for its use. I won't go into too much detail here because it's up to you to define your own goals, but I will give you an example. Just note that to draw down means to take profit from your bankroll permanently, which is its purpose after all. So here's an example of a long-term strategy statement. I will establish a base bankroll of $1,000. When it triples in value, I'll draw down the original base bankroll amount and establish a new base bankroll at double the original value. I will then adjust my bets accordingly. I'll celebrate my success with dinner and a gift from my wife. At any time I start getting uncomfortable at the new bet size, I'll stop doubling my base bankroll and continue at that level into the future. Your staking strategy determines how much you wager each bet. A professional bettor will use a method that will be based on his total bankroll. There are many methods, but the important thing is to pick one and stick to it consistently. Our choice of strategy will depend on how aggressive or risk-averse we are as a gambler. The key here is to make sure that we know how many losses our selection strategy is likely to face and make sure our bankroll can handle this run of bad luck at its worst. Wildfire Pro Sportsbet has an estimated run of outs calculator which will help you to determine how many outs you are facing based on what your likely strike rate is of the betting approach you are using. The following page will list the best professional staking methods tailored to our triple favourite selection method explained in previous videos. Remember, if you play a selection with a lower strike rate than 69%, then lower your bet. We begin by defining our base bankroll or BBR. This is the value of our initial bankroll, say $1,000. We then calculate an X% and Y% figure based on this value. So let's look at specific staking strategies in detail. First, we have the target profit, which is basically to aim to win X% of our bankroll every bet. A typical value for X is 1 to 5%, depending on how aggressive you are. Then there's the aggressive target profit. That's where we aim to win X%, but on a loss, we increase the target by Y%. When the win comes in, we reset our target back to X%. Y% again will depend on our expected run of outs. For our method, we might want to set it at 5%. Next, we have the target spend. Now, with the target profit, it can be a little dangerous because our wager amount can increase significantly out of our control as we lose more. Setting instead the target spend to X% of our bankroll is the way to control this potential problem and is often used by conservative bettors. For our method, our expected run of outs for 1,000 races at 69% is 6. So setting X to 10%, that is, our bankroll will cover 10 bets, should see us safely into the long term. The next approach is an aggressive target spend, where we still aim to spend X% of our bankroll every bet, but on a loss, we increase the spend by Y%. When a win comes in, we restart the target at X%. Y% will depend on the run of outs expected. For our method, we might want to set it to around 5 to 10%. The final staking strategy is known as the Kelly criterion, and it's fairly controversial. The method calculates a wager amount that varies with the advantage or value you have ahead of the market odds. This means if your bet is of slight value, then you bet a conservative amount. But if it's of real value, in other words, you have a large odds advantage in your favour, then you wager a lot more. Now, I say it's controversial because there's a lot of debate on whether it's a safe way to bet or not. My slide shows two links, the first showing an article that debunks the Kelly criterion, and a second link that debunks the debunking. Now, personally, I've analysed the debate, and I'm pretty sure I have a solution that'll end the arguments once and for all. Now, Wildfire Pro Sportsbet has a Kelly criterion calculator. Here's the results for a couple of typical bets using the Kelly criterion. Now, my analysis was simple. Calculate the expected run of outs over 100 bets and see if our bankroll could survive the worst case scenario based on what betting amount the criterion gave us. The second image shows the result of those three tests based on the expected run of outs. It shows that in each case we would lose our bankroll. So the conclusion's simple. Our bankroll couldn't survive the run of outs based on the standard Kelly criterion suggested bet. Thus, the suggested bet is too aggressive and would result in the long-term loss of our bankroll. The solution to the problem in this otherwise great idea is to bet a fraction of the suggested bet. This is called fractional Kelly betting. Note the addition of the bet modifier in the following calculator. Using a conservative bet modifier of 0.4 or 40%, we can now use the criterion to calculate our wager and be sure it won't kill our bankroll should we hit a long run of outs. Problem solved. We now have another good wagering strategy that I call the Kelly target spend that will improve our profits in the long term compared to a flat target spend. It should be noted that even though we use a 0.4 modifier, the lower our strike rate, the more sensitive we become to a run of outs, and potentially even 0.4 is not a safe enough modifier and we should round down. Wildfire Pro Sportsbet has a calculator that will help apply your staking strategy every time you bet. Just select the target wager based on the strategy you use. As you see here, the calculator requires your base bankroll and the X% figure you use. If you use an aggressive style of staking, you'll also need your Y% value and the last bet you lost. Once the values are calculated, just use the target value that corresponds with your staking strategy and you'll be right to go. One final tip on staking strategies. In a previous video I said the enemy of consistency is variation. This is also true for your staking plan as well. You should use your main bankroll to bet using the same selection method and the same staking plan every time. At the very most, if you're going to change things, don't do it too often. Don't mix and match selections and staking methods as you bet. Otherwise, you should use another separate bankroll if you wish to do this. In this video, we've learned 5 professional staking strategies that can be used to calculate your wager in relation to your total bankroll. A modified Kelly criterion method based on the longest run of outs value has also been introduced to safely bet using this variable staking approach. At the start of this tutorial, it was mentioned that there are 3 very important aspects to a professional bet: how to bet, how much to bet, and your long-term strategy. We have one to go. The specific techniques of how to bet need a lot of attention, so they will be the subject of the next tutorial. I hope to see you there, and thanks for watching.